Hi everybody, it's Amelia here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're safe and sound wherever you are. I'm here with the April Q&A for Bad Astrologers. Y'all sent lovely questions as always, so let's get right into it. So first, we have a question from Jason. Lovely to hear from you, Jason. About the IC, which is perfect. I keep bringing up the IC. I talk about it on Twitter all the time because I think it's so important with what we've all been experiencing with the quarantine, but more on that later. First, Jason's question says, the IC is kind of hard to wrap my mind around, and you brought it up the other week. My IC is in Scorpio, and conjunct Uranus in Placidus, and both of my parents were Scorpios, and I've moved around a lot after childhood. I feel like I had a childhood that was full of intensity, secrecy, control, and volcanic eruptions of emotion. And now that I am a father myself, I'm trying to think about and intuit what this means for me. It's a little more mysterious. Thanks so much. Thank you. Yeah. The IC can be a really mysterious placement, or it can feel mysterious because it is the very base of our chart. So if you're looking at the chart as a circle, for those of you who might be fresh to astrology, it's at that very bottom 6 o'clock position, and it's often the parts of ourselves that we don't want to face very often, the stuff that only comes up in like the confines of therapy, or in our more emotional moments that are harder to control. That's because the IC is related to our private selves, and what I mean by that is family, childhood, and kind of what made you who you are. It can also be your psychological makeup, right? Like, what foundation are you coming from? And I say those things like they're easy to deal with, but they're not, right? I've definitely seen in the modern sense, and as we, move more away from the nuclear family, more people experiencing IC, which is also in Placidus, the cusp of the 4th house, associated with chosen family. So anybody who you feel like, oh, that's family, like those are my people, that's a very IC kind of matter. And it's also related to your physical environment, like where is the actual space that you live? What building do you live in? What town are you from? What physical part of the world are you inhabiting right now? Obviously those are all really loaded things, but they're all there propping us up at the base of the chart, the IC. So if you're trying to figure out how to find the IC, it's directly opposite the midheaven. Most charts will show MC, medium Chali, the top of the heavens or the middle of the heavens for the midheaven, but the IC is the bottom of the heavens. And so you can just take whatever, it's the same degree, but take whatever sign is opposite. So in this case, this would mean that you have a Taurus midheaven because your IC is in Scorpio. You see they're two sides of a coin. So I wanted to talk quickly about how this works with whole signs, because I know a lot of y'all are moving to using whole signs. I'm team whole signs all the way, although I look at both Placidus and whole signs just to stay up to date on what's going on. It's really about what feels right for your practice and where the intuition is coming for you. So I'm not like a strict, like you must convert to whole signs, although I have evidence if you would like to look at it. So in whole signs, things like the midheaven, the IC, the ascendant, they behave more like a point. They retain their extreme importance, right? But they can fall into one of the surrounding houses, at least in the case of the IC or the MC. MC being the midheaven. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Do know that it's still, the IC is still important in whole signs, so you're still gonna be looking at like conjunctions to that area. It doesn't erase the importance of it for sure. So the sign on the IC tells us a lot, but most importantly, like you're talking about, it reveals a lot about family conditioning and what sort of childhood experiences did you have? How did you feel towards your parents? What kind of attachment style might you have, if that's something that you're interested in reading about? And in Scorpio, actually I'm going to talk about this a bit in the podcast that's coming out on Wednesday. In Scorpio, there can be a sort of shadowy aspect to your childhood. Like, things were not all out in the open. You did not have a family who had like family meetings. Let's all get together and discuss how we're feeling. It was, you know, a lot of things were potentially very repressed. There was probably a lot of taboos in your family. A lot of things of like, oh, well, that's off limits. That's off boundaries. I'm not going to talk about that at all. So it creates an environment where at times a child can feel scared or unsafe, not necessarily because the actual environment is unsafe, though it definitely may be. You know, Scorpio in the 4th house can be trauma of some kind, but it can just be a sense of emotional intensity brought in by the family or the location. You could have lived in a location that, I don't know, maybe you lived in a haunted house or something. But I just wanted to say that I think it's so beautiful that you are, as a father, trying to work through the sort of IC issues, which I think is so important. I have Mars on my IC, so I can definitely relate to having a lot of volatility there. And you having Uranus conjunct the IC, I think it sort of doubles down on that being some sort of trauma related to the family, like something about that environment, like you said, it was full of intensity, secrecy, control, and volcanic eruptions. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have explained it better myself. Uranus is that very high volatility, electrical explosion kind of energy. So I guess the best thing for you to do is look at how those things are placed in the whole chart, because I think it's good to sort of peel back the layers of the signs and that conjunction, but you seem to already have a really good handle on it. So I wanted to mention how it functions as part of a T-square. I'm pulling up your chart right here if you see me looking down. So it's part of a T-square with your Aquarius moon and Venus in Leo in the 7th and 1st house axis, or 6th and 12th house axis, depending on which house system you use. But I'm thinking that it's, you know, the moon and Venus together is the feminine principle. I try to stay very away from rigid gender binary in my work, but when we're looking at childhood stuff, it's really hard to ignore the fact that this seems like something relating to a mother who was distant, probably because she was involved in doing her own thing. Maybe she was a career woman, maybe she was really focused on how things look to other people, as opposed to, you know, especially with the Scorpio there, it's like, well, if I can just hide the way this feels from others, then we can, you know, no one will ever see it. It'll look pretty on the outside and I can push that down. So I think for you, you can reflect that in your own life as part of that T-square. The Aquarius moon is very detached and it can look on emotional explosions and say, why would you react that way? We have to stay calm, we have to stay cool. And then the Venus in Leo is focused on, well, I want this to be beautiful and this doesn't feel good to me, right? But I do think that the saving grace here is there's a trine to Uranus in your IC from Mercury and Jupiter in Cancer in your 12th or 11th house, depending on how you look at it. And I think that, you know, anytime there's a good aspect from Jupiter, it's like, I see this as you doing what you've done here. Like, you are being proactive about spirituality, about caretaking, and like through that healing process, you're able to handle those moments of crisis that come up within you, whether it's related to the way you were conditioned to respond, or just, you know, generally how something's feeling in the moment. I think that as you sort of unravel, continue to research about Scorpio IC and Uranus IC, although it seems like you really get that part of it, but just kind of rest assured that Mercury and Jupiter in Cancer, you know, and Jupiter's obviously exalted in Cancer, so that's wonderful. Those things are really a softening influence. You know, it's like you are doing the work to communicate, to care, and to sort of transmute that any negativity from your childhood to shield your own child from experiencing that. So yeah, that's a very good thing. I'm glad to see it. So I hope that helps. You know, parents who are watching this, the IC can help you learn more about your parenting style. So look at that. It can also be, so it's the parenting you received, the parenting you give to your own children or those otherwise in your care, and the parenting you give to yourself. We all have areas of our life where, you know, even a wonderful parent will have areas where they will have fallen short, and you will have to fill in the gaps. And so look to your IC to see areas where you might need to do a little reparenting too. So good luck, Jason. I hope that helps you. All right. Ivy. Welcome, Ivy. By the way, it's their first time on the Q&A. I'm really excited to talk to you, so welcome. Your question is, I just started my Saturn return in Aquarius, and I feel like the hype has got me pretty anxious. There's a lot of hype around Saturn returns, it's fair. I'd love to hear any insight on what a Saturn return in Aquarius might specifically entail. It's in your 4th house, and how to navigate a Saturn return in the years ahead. I'm overwhelmed with how long this is going to last. Thanks. So a little funny story. I actually had a bonus episode queued up and all written, mostly written, for Saturn returns in Aquarius and like how to survive a Saturn transit. But I just didn't feel like the right time to release it. I felt like Venus retrograde needed to go first, so that may be coming in the near future. But a short digestion of that is, yes, there's a ton of hype around the Saturn return, and I will say that it's warranted. I was doing astrology readings long before my Saturn return and advising people on how to deal with it. And when it came time to have my own, I found myself just amazed at how truly difficult it was. However, by the end of it, I think you will get to a place where you'll be like, I would never want to go back to the way it was before my Saturn return. You can really end your Saturn return feeling super good, and here is why. So when you look at your Saturn return, the wonderful thing about it is that there's going to be a refinement, and that refinement is going to take place for you in your 5th house, which is a house of joy and creativity and romance. Here's the trick with it. So Saturn in the 5th house can kind of feel like all of a sudden all the fun got sucked out of your life. And maybe that's what quarantine has felt a little bit like for you, because obviously Saturn moved into Aquarius during the quarantine self-isolation time. You know, Saturn is restrictions, and all of a sudden you feel very limited in the amount of fun you're able to experience, or you're having to work hard to create your own fun. But the really lovely thing about having Saturn transit there is that you can create the most amazing creative practice that gives you that sense of fun. It just takes a while to get used to. And I'm not saying that it's not going to be difficult. We all have all kinds of wounds around worthiness. You know, Saturn is very much around worthiness, related to ourselves as artists, ourselves as romantic partners. And so it will definitely bring out a lot of that. But I think for you, so it's going to be square to your Pluto and Scorpio in the 2nd house, which is value and worthiness. So again, you know, I think you'll be working through a lot of the subconscious things you've been, maybe media has told you to believe, or your childhood told you to believe about, or even your industry told you to believe about how much value you have. And I'm sure it is so much more than you maybe even realize. And also square to Venus on your Libra ascendant. And so Venus and Libra again have to do with standards of beauty, love. You know, Scorpio and Libra are both signs of relationships and connection. And so for you, I'm seeing this definitely as being related to coming to terms with being a treasure right? Like in any partnership, you are a treasure, you are wonderful, and you absolutely deserve to be treated amazingly and nothing less. And so I think this will help you get there. I think it's ultimately about you figuring out your value add as it relates to relationships and also situations where you're earning money for your creativity. So anytime there's a Saturn return, you're also going to want to look at the houses in your chart that are ruled by Saturn. So where is Capricorn and where is Aquarius? Because those things are going to be important, not just because we're going to have Saturn in both of those signs this year. So obviously we just talked about Aquarius being your 5th house, but your 4th house is also Saturn ruled. That's where Capricorn is. So the 4th house is where the beginning of the IC, which we just talked about. So it's a lot of unraveling stories about your family of origin, about your own emotional patterns, about how you feel, right? I think the thing that might be the most challenging about your Saturn return is just feeling overwhelmed by how much capacity you have to feel things. So that's okay. That's a beautiful thing. In fact, Saturn right now, I checked, it's on top of your IC. So everything I just said to Jason about the IC, imagine Saturn transiting there, really helping you hone your understanding of that part of your life. Even if it is difficult, Saturn can be a reality check. And you have to ask yourself, well, if the people I consider to be my family or my loved ones are not making me feel the way I want to feel, or if I emotionally am not where I want to be, what sort of work and effort am I going to have to put in to get there? And it might take a long time. Saturn returns do feel long. I won't sugarcoat that. They do feel long. But trust me when I say that time is going to be some of the most valuable, again, that word valuable time you ever spend just with yourself, with your own life, learning what it is that you want. You're going to come out of it feeling so strong. And so, I always talk about Saturn as the zodiac's personal trainer, right? Like he truly can help you work those muscles and get strong and have tools in your toolbox after that. My best Saturn advice is that Saturn responds to structure. So give yourself measurable goals and get an app, write it down. Do anything you can to actually measure your progress. Write down, by this day I would like to do this. Even if you don't get there, you wrote it down and you can measure that progress. And I think with Saturn in your sign, you'll be amazed at how much progress you can make with that steady, intentional mindset. Even if it feels like every day is like putting one foot in front of the other barely, it's gonna be worth it and you're gonna make it through. I think that's the best advice I can offer. Saturn is actually, I forget the Latin word, but associated with the Latin word for shit or manure, because manure was used as fertilizer for crops, and Saturn is associated with the harvest. So Saturn is literally shitty, but think about the way that those things can, fertilize your life and help you understand what soil to tend and what crops to reap. And by the end, I do believe Saturn gives rewards after each transit. So you're gonna get something good out of this, I promise. So I hope that wasn't too scary. I hope it helps. If you have any other questions, just feel free to reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to answer. Alrighty, so Lindsay. She says, my chart seems to emphasize that I have a strong creative energy, but I don't really recognize that in myself. I have 3 personal planets in Leo, Sun, Mercury, and Mars, but I don't really consider myself a creative person at all, but I dearly want to be. Is there anything in my natal chart or upcoming transits that can help me connect with that side of myself? This is a really good question. I feel like especially among the astrology set, there is a lot of language and pressure about creative practice, and we all have to be creatives, and like creative is the thing that you want to be. That's the thing everybody's striving for, like some sort of Shangri-La or something. And I think first understand that everyone is creative every day, right? If you're problem solving in your job, you're being creative. Does that mean that you have to paint or write or make music if you don't feel called to do that? No, not at all. So like, don't feel, I would try to distinguish between a real creative calling of like, I want to experiment with this hobby, or I want to try and express myself in this way, versus I want to be a creative and make that a part of like your professional life or just your life in general, if it feels like it's not a fit, because it doesn't have to be. So here's what I think as far as transits coming up for you. So Leo is a very creative sign, obviously the sign of the performer. So many incredible performers have that strong Leo energy. They're the ones that want to craft the show from beginning to end, right? So they're behind the scenes putting it together. They soak up those moments on stage, and they just are so good at knowing how to be showmen, right? Or showwomen. But Leo is actually a lot more than creativity in the modern sense that I just kind of described, of like go write a song or something like that. You know, I think leadership is a very Leo pursuit. And obviously you can be a leader in whatever sort of job that you have, but like the traditional, like, I am the boss, I am going to lead people. You know, Leos have this incredibly big heart and generous spirit, and I think that you know, that is something that you could tap into maybe as opposed to the creativity for sure. Again with the transit, so Neptune transiting your third house of communication right now in Pisces can make things feel really nebulous for you when it comes to how you want to share your story. I think that might be where the sort of genuine creative desire is coming from. Neptune can be all of a sudden feeling like, oh, I feel connected to some sort of inspiration, but I don't have the tools to put it out there. And the only way to start is just to start. Make it messy. Neptune loves like drawing outside the lines and just getting started. So honestly, that's my advice, right? Neptune in the third opens you up to so many new sources of information and inspiration, but you have to create the container for it. So maybe put an alarm on your phone and say, all right, every day at this time, I'm gonna write a little bit. Or give yourself, again with the measurable goals, give yourself a day where you're like, I'm going to work on X, Y, or Z. It makes a huge difference, and I think you'll see progress that way. Also, Venus retrograde in Gemini coming up next week is going to ping your Pallas Athena and Chiron. And I think, so Pallas Athena has a lot to do with craft, right? And sudden burst of inspiration. You think of Athena bursting forth from Zeus's head. And Chiron, of course, is healing. So the way I see this is like, I think you're going to heal a lot of those wounds. You know, you say you don't feel connected to that. Why? Like, did someone tell you that you couldn't? Do you just believe that you couldn't? But I think this Venus retrograde, which we're very much in the shadow period of now, you will be able to take that energy and go within and say, no, like, I am creative and this is how I want to be creative, and really move forward that way. It'll be really lovely. So I hope that helps. Let me know how it goes. If you have any other questions about creating a creative practice, let me know and I'll be more than happy to help. Okay, so the last question comes from Laura, who says, I've been looking at Chiron in my chart. It's exactly opposite my midheaven, or exactly conjunct my IC, depending on which way you're looking, I guess. It's also in strong opposition to my Pluto and Uranus. Any thoughts on what that means for me? Thanks for all you do, especially during the weird and turbulent times. Happy to do it. I hope that this is keeping you sane and giving you like some sort of, I don't know, something to look forward to. It's really hard to be cooped up in your home. Hopefully you're in a safe and secure location, and you're feeling well and your loved ones are feeling well. And even if they're not, like, I hope that this is some kind of distraction that can keep you feeling good. So if so, then I've done my job. All right, so this is an amazing question, and I'm so excited to talk about Chiron. I feel like he was really popular, you know, in past years, maybe in like the 90s, early 2000s, but we don't talk about him as much anymore. But I think it's a really meaningful influence. It's super important. So I really want to unpack the mythology of Chiron because it's super interesting and kind of like very weird, and there's parts of it we don't like point out enough, I don't think. And it can help you access areas of healing and raw tenderness and just help you feel more in tune with yourself. So Chiron traditionally is known as the wounded healer. He's supposed to be a shaman and help you work through really like deep traumatic wounds. And we all have that, you know, even if you feel like you've led a charmed life or were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you know, that doesn't mean that you didn't have emotional things that were affecting you that were really challenging. We all have difficulties that we go through, so don't write that off. But Chiron, if you look at the mythology, he was a centaur who trained the Greek heroes for battle, and there's a long list of them. There's Achilles, Patroclus, Ajax, Jason. He even trained Hercules for his labors. But beyond that, his function as a healer is really, really interesting. So he trained Asclepius in the healing arts of medicine and herbs. And obviously Asclepius was like the early, worshipped as a god of medicine in some places and was the first physician. And he's said to have taught Dionysus how to dance. And together they created what became the Bacchic rites or Dionysian initiatory cult. So that was, you can do some Googling about that. There's lots of scandalous activities that took place, intoxicants imbibed in an effort to sort of free the body and get closer to true divine ecstasy, like loss of self and uniting with God. So obviously that's a lot of functions. Chiron was also an astrologer and an oracle that people consulted for divinatory advice on the future. So you will hear that Chiron can be associated with astrology as well. So looking at a chart, Chiron means a lot of things, but you can conceptualize him kind of like a life coach, right? Like he's like your therapist and your strength trainer and your spiritual advisor, all rolled into one thing. He's really the ultimate in helping you heal, but you have to do the work. Like he's the coach on the sidelines, but you're still the one in the ring throwing the punches and figuring out, you know, how you're gonna land your next job. So your Chiron is in Pisces and your 4th house, conjunct Saturn and Juno. So that tells me that the wounds and the sort of intense feelings that you have to work out are related to the potential conflict between family and partnership. Feeling like maybe there's not enough love to go around, either in your family of origin or within a love relationship, whether it's you as like just a romantic partner, or particularly Juno as a goddess of marriage, you as a spouse. You know, Saturn can make us feel those feelings of scarcity at first. Before we sort of come to terms with that, we realize it's really an area of strength where we can learn to do more with less because of the lessons that we've had to experience there. So in Pisces, so we both have Sagittarius rising in the 4th house. I think there is a lot of just overwhelming emotion and sort of like nebulous feelings around, like it's kind of just hard to get your fingers around whatever is in your Pisces 4th house IC situation, right? But with Saturn snug up against the IC like that with Juno, like it's really this feeling of like being almost like being underparented, like even if your parents were really present in your life, like you felt like you just were not getting what you needed from them. And so you spend the rest of your time trying to like nourish yourself with strong partnerships, maybe that have a power couple dynamic to make you feel like, okay, I've got this, like I am worthy. So yeah, your Chiron is opposite your moon, Uranus, Pluto conjunction in the 10th house, with your midheaven there. So having it be opposite all that energy in the 10th house, I think there can be work-life balance for you is maybe not so much a thing. Like, I think work-life balance is important and you have to learn to have boundaries between those two things, but for you, it can be like a seesaw, like swinging wildly between one and the other. You have a really powerful presence in your career, but sometimes that you either use it to mask or like spirit you away from the deep feelings of undernourishment in your emotional life. Like I mentioned, I have my own experiences with strong influences to the IC, so I can definitely relate. So your Chiron, the aspects help us understand that a little bit more as well. It's square your Jupiter and Gemini in your 7th house for a good time. I actually kind of like this for you. And even a square from Jupiter can be motivating and not stabilizing, but at least like expanding, right? You're more willing. Having Saturn on the IC can make you want to close yourself off. And so having Jupiter there really helps you stay open. And, you know, I think you attract partners into your life, whether it is a spouse or, you know, a best friend or a colleague that makes you feel loved and like it's okay to engage with the world again. So that's a good thing. Stay in strong communication with those partners because that is really going to help you shine. I think Venus retrograde across your Jupiter and Gemini over the next couple weeks is really going to help you work through that partnership part of the story that we've been talking about. And then your Chiron is also trying Neptune and Scorpio in the 12th house, which is nice because, you know, Pisces mirrors that energy and it really gives a nice effect. So ultimately, I think spiritual practice, which we've already talked about you exploring more through magic, maybe even a little witchcraft, whatever feels comfortable to you, maybe tarot, especially with symbolism. Keeping a dream journal could be really powerful. They really, really help you work through your Chiron concerns. So the good news is that even if you have those inherently difficult parts of your chart, that I think you'll be working through those stories always. You know, the natal promise, as it's called, stays with you forever, but you get better at it and you get better tools, and the stars through those aspects have given you the tools, the strong partnerships, and the magical practice and intuition and understanding of symbolism to help you move out of that place of scarcity and towards like full open engagement with the world. So I'm excited for you, and I hope that helps explain who Chiron is. You know, if you check on Chiron transits can be a little bit tough. Transits to your Chiron can be tough because it opens you up and it makes you feel so much, and it really can like eliminate that boundary between you and your pain. I experienced Chiron moving across my Mars in Pisces for many, many years, and I just felt like, how much more deeply can I feel this? I see stuff, you know, and the answer was just more and more and more, but I became more adept in dealing with it. And so Chiron is like that. Because Chiron is the trainer, he's never, ever gonna leave you high and dry. You know, you're going to come out of that better than you were before. So, and there's always magic to it. There is a magical faded element to Chiron that I really love. So I hope that helps. That's all I've got for you, and I hope that those answers help you find your way and help you have a wonderful month. I'm gonna get this going sooner next month, so be thinking of your questions. You can ask something about your natal chart, you can just ask something about the upcoming astrology, whatever feels good to you. And in the meantime, if you have questions, like, never hesitate to reach out. You can reach me in a comment here, in a message, or just email badastrologers@gmail.com, or just reach out to me at Amelia Quint on Twitter and at AmeliaQuint_ on Instagram. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much for making this podcast possible, and yeah, it's much appreciated. Have a wonderful month and see you next time.